Welcome back to Study With Additti. My name is Additti and this channel is dedicated to revision tips and tricks along with much more to make your schooling life a whole lot easier. Today I'll be talking about how to revise geography for GCSE and A-level. This video is part of a series that I will be doing and it's called the How to Revise a Certain Subject. So please leave any requests that you have in the comments below and I'll try my best to cater for them in any way possible. I'm hoping to do as many subjects as I can, so we'll see how it goes. So for GCSE Geography, I did OCR Geography B as my board, and for A-level I'm currently doing edXL. I've already got a few requests for this video, so yeah, let's get started. I do have a piece of paper that I'll be looking at with very rough notes, just to jog my memory of things to say, and so if I'm looking down, that's why. So at GCSE I got a 9. If you want to see the rest of my GCSE results, they'll be linked up there in the little eye. The first thing is content. How I went about learning the content was writing notes and just learning them. My notes came from the specification. As I said in my previous video on how to revise science, I used the specification as the basis of my notes. So everything in the specification was in my notes, and if it wasn't, I made sure that it was. My school actually gave me a checklist of each topic with the specification on it. So it would just be like a little table with the actual words of the specification from it, just to make it easier for us to make our notes from. And I just checked off the boxes as I went, and that was really my content done. Make sure you use memorable statistics in your revision notes as well, and because they're statistics, I think it's a good idea to colour code them as well, especially if you're learning statistics for multiple things. You can get quite confused and that's something you definitely don't want in an exam. I kept all my revision notes in this folder. This is along with my classwork, however. So what I did was put my classwork in and then I'd put my revision notes in straight afterwards, just so if when I was revising I needed to look back at my classwork, it was right there and I wasn't wasting time trying to find it. One big important thing to note is that when you're making notes from the specification and you don't understand what one little bit means, you have to ask, because if that bit comes up as a 6-mark question, then you've automatically lost 6 marks. So it's better asking there and then. Best ways to understand things during the making of your revision notes is by going on YouTube, asking your teacher, asking a friend, or just going on the internet in general. So my notes were quite basic. They were just on lined paper. Sometimes I had a colour code, sometimes I didn't, but that just kind of depended on what it is that I was writing about. Sometimes I put a few diagrams in there. Sometimes I put mind maps in there, but a lot of the time I didn't because I don't really like mind maps. One thing I definitely say is, if you're learning similar stuff about different things, try and use coloured paper. So for example, if I was learning about the characteristics of the tropical rainforest and the climatic factors that relate to that, and then I had to do the same for deserts, I might get mixed up between the two, especially for the climatic factors. So in that case, I'd say use coloured card or paper or whatever, just to distinguish in your brain that these two are different. Also, if you use a colour associated with the thing that you're learning about, so like tropical rainforests, I might use green, deserts, I might use yellow, that sort of thing. That might help. That would probably help as well, because otherwise it's just going to take you so much time to remember it because you'll just keep getting mixed up. I also use my textbook to make notes, but you have to not fall into the trap of writing out the entire textbook. I also use my textbook to help me write the notes, so I just kind of use that as a backup source with my classwork as my primary source. We had to learn about this weather phenomenon called El Nino, and I didn't understand it for ages. Like, I understood it and then I didn't, I understood it and then I didn't, so it just didn't click. But then I watched this really low quality video from some woman in Texas and I understood it. Even if the videos aren't that high quality or they just don't look good, try them out, because that ended up saving a lot of my marks. So if you have mini end of unit tests, try and make revision notes as you go, because that's what I did for geography, and that's probably one of the reasons why I got a 9 in the end. Talking about tests, it's really important to revise for these tests, because they can show you what you're doing right, show you what you're doing wrong from a really early stage, and that's what you really need to improve. So once you've made your revision notes, revise from them for the test, and then from the test, once you get it back and it's all marked, look at the questions that you got wrong. Then try and find people in your class that got those questions right, and take a picture of their answer or something and write it out. That will be so good. Then keep that with your tests. Oh yeah, make sure you keep your tests safe, especially for things like mocks and the real thing. They can be really handy to just go over. If you're able to find the mark scheme of the test from your teachers or from your geography department or whatever, print it out and keep it in your folder next to the test. It'll be easier to do your corrections. Also, if you wanted to implement anything from the mark scheme into other answers that you may have taken pictures of, I think that's a really good idea too, because that way you've got a really solid picture of what the question should look like. So the next thing is how to structure questions. For OCR Geography B at GCSE, there were all the way up to 8 mark questions. I think there'd be something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 8. So make sure you know how to structure each and every one of those. An acronym that we were given was PEAL. That stands for point, explain, evidence/example, and then link. I've just got like a little structure sheet that I'm going to read out here. So point is describe the idea or the point that you're making. Explain is develop your point with an explanation of how or why. And if it's a describe question, just give a little bit more detail. Evidence or example is using places, facts, figures and stuff like that to support the idea that you've already made in your point and your further explanation. It can also be linking to other points. You can also have S for summarise, and that's if it's an 8 mark or more question, and that's just summing up a viewpoint or like just giving a little conclusion of what you've said. Such a summary would only have to be short anyway. For the 4, 6 and 8 mark questions, each paragraph would be worth around 2 marks. So each paragraph would have to have the PEAL structure within it. And so for a 4 mark question, you'd need 2 paragraphs. For a 6 mark question, you need 3. And for an 8 mark question, you'd need 4. Link is linking what you've said back to the question. Also, one big thing to remember is the different command words. So that's things like assess, examine, explain, describe. And you've got to really learn those. We got given definitions of them, so I'm just going to read them out to you. So assess is determining the relative significance of something by weighing up strengths and weaknesses. You have to give consideration to all factors and identify which are the most important. I'd recommend you make notes on this. Calculate is mathematically work out the value of something. Compare is describe the similarities and differences of something. Describe is set out the characteristics/features in some detail. Define, give the meaning. Discuss, give a balanced view of both sides in an argument. Evaluate, compare strengths and weaknesses to reach a judgment in a conclusion. So evaluate is quite similar to assess. For evaluate, it will tend to be more of a longer question because you have to reach a conclusion. So that would probably be an 8 mark question or something. Examine is look in close detail and establish the key facts and important issues. Explain/outline is give reasons how or why. Identify/state/name is recognize or point out. That will usually be a 1 mark question or even a 2 mark question at the max. Justify is give detailed, balanced reasons for your opinion. Label is add keywords with arrows. That's quite basic. Suggest is give reasons how or why something may occur. And the last one is to what extent do you agree? How much do you agree with a statement based on the evidence in an argument? Yeah, I'd say command words are really important. You've just got to know when you see the command word what it's telling you to do. So if it says describe, make sure you don't explain. If it says assess, make sure you don't evaluate, that sort of thing. So I'd say definitely learn those if you haven't already, because those are a big part. My school also suggested another acronym that we can use for exam technique. So it's BUG. So B is box the command word, so explain, assess, everything that I just read out. Underline the key words in the question for you. And then G is glance back at the question when you're writing your answer. It's very easy to go on a tangent in your answer. I definitely get into the habit of this now, especially for end of unit tests and things like that. Talking about case studies as well. I know there's a lot of case studies to learn, but I think a good idea to minimise the amount of notes you have on each case study is by doing an A5 page of notes instead of an A4 one, and try and do it on plain paper as well. Although you may have to write smaller, you can make it colourful and you can have little subtitles and everything, and that way it's going to be a lot more revision friendly as well than if you just wrote in like blue or black pen throughout the whole thing. My friend also made case study cards, which are smaller than A5. Although they weren't colourful, they had all the information that she needed, and she did really well as well. One thing I didn't mention before is doing homework. A lot of the homeworks that we were set were related directly to the specification. So if that happens with you, make sure you do your homework really well. That might come up in the real thing, and if you haven't done your homework well, you won't be able to answer the question and you're just losing marks that way. When I went into one of the papers in the real thing a few months ago, I had a bit of a surprise. I didn't know that we had to learn types of graphs and types of maps as well. So there was this multiple choice question and it asked me, what map is this? And then it had some options including isoline and chloroplath. So I guessed, because I didn't know which one it was. The one I guessed first was right, but then I changed my mind, which was annoying. But anyway, so make sure that you do read your actual specification if you get given checklists and things like that, because I didn't. So the specification, at least for OCR Geography B and GCSE, asks you to learn the different types of maps and different types of graphs, and there's quite a variety that you need to learn. So somehow incorporate these into your revision notes as well, because they may pull out a question like that in the exam and it may be worth more than 1 mark, so you've really got to be careful. Another big thing in geography papers is fieldwork. So fieldwork questions are based on your physical and human fieldwork that you go and do with school as part of a trip. When you're there, really pay attention to what they're saying. For our physical geography fieldwork, we had a number of data collection techniques. So just make notes on like the primary sources of data collection. So for physical geography, I remember that we did a data collection method that involves measuring the angle of the beach slope or something like that. So make sure you know a few methods. Also for these methods, try and put stuff on how you could improve or if there's any flaws with the methods. So for example, an environmental quality survey could be very subjective because it's down to human interpretation, that sort of thing. So you just use your knowledge from the trip. You can even ask your teachers, your friends, the internet, whatever, but make sure you have those in your notes and you do learn them. In terms of practice questions, I'd say there are usually some papers on the websites of the exam boards, so try those, even if they're not the board that you're doing. Also, if you get access to any other questions, try and do those. I remember we were in a lesson and our teacher gave us access to the papers that weren't normally supposed to be accessed by students, so she put them up on a student platform that we have, and we were able to get them off and we were able to do them as well. So look out for things like that. CGP have a workbook as well, so that's quite good. The revision and practice purple book can be quite good, especially when making notes and stuff like that. That's all the tips for GCSE. I'm just going to add a bit of stuff for A-level as well, because I'm doing A-level. As I said before, I'm doing Edexcel. I have 2 teachers for geography and we're doing different topics with each. So I'm doing regeneration with one and coasts with the other. And I can definitely say that the topics are like 100 times bigger than what they were at GCSE. They're so long. There's like a whole booklet for the specification for each topic, and from going from a page at GCSE, it's quite a big jump, I'd say. Sorry if the angle of the camera has changed a little bit. I've had to clear my memory card, and so I've had to fiddle with the camera a little. But anyway, so coast is quite technical, and that makes it quite a lot different from GCSE. We've also been introduced to a 12 marker and a 20 marker as well, so that's very different from GCSE 2. It's a lot harder to get the same marks per question than a GCSE, but I think I will carry on mainly with the same revision method as I did at GCSE. I might adapt it, I'm not sure yet, because it's only been a half term. This is not one of my methods, but I think it's quite a good method. So I currently mentor a year 11 girl in my school for geography, and what she's done, instead of writing revision notes as I did, took a copy of the specification or the checklist that we got in our school, and next to it she's put revision questions based on the wording of the specification. So for example, if there was something about knowing the causes of the earthquake in Nepal, then she'd have as a question, what were the causes of the earthquake in Nepal? Straightforward, but I think they're really good questions, because that's all the examiners and the people that make the papers do. They take the specification and think about what type of questions they can come up with from that. Then they give them a number of marks. So like, I don't know, that one would be a 4 marker or a 6 marker. And there you go, that's your question. So again, I just really want to reiterate the point of looking at the specification, whether that be on a tablet like I mentioned in my How to Revise Science video, or from a checklist. Make sure that you link your classwork to the specification with a colour code or numbers, anything that helps you revise. That way you'll instantly know what fits where, and everything will just become a lot clearer to you. But I think that's all really I have to say. If you do have any questions about how to revise geography, either for GCSE or A-level or AS, comment down below and I'll see what I can do. I'd like to say thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And once you've subscribed, hit the bell icon so you can be here for my videos early and know exactly when I post. Once again, any requests that you have for any videos, especially for this series, please comment them down below. I'll try and cater to them to the best of my ability. Thank you for watching once again, and goodbye!